Thanks for joining us again on our series in Overcoming Codependent Behaviors. We're on Lesson 6, which is Detachment. Each lesson I come to, I think this is my favorite lesson. They're all fascinating. I still think the most important one is the one on feelings, because you can't do any of the others without that one.
Okay.
You know, you can do Lesson 2 on feelings. You can learn to get in touch with your feelings, learn to deal with them, learn to take responsibility for your feelings and actions, and not do any of the others. You can do the one on boundaries. You can learn all about boundaries and not do any of the others.
Right.
But the other lessons cannot be done without doing the one on feelings. So that's always, to me, been the most important. But I love the one on detachment that we're going to talk about today. It was an idea, a way of coping, a healthy way of coping that I had never heard of, that I didn't know was necessary or even existed. For a codependent who's given their whole life to other people, who've lost their identities in other people, and who has spent their life doing for and caring for other people, and you tell them they're going to have to detach from that person, it scares them to death. At first, the idea is disturbing because they think, but then they'll think I don't care. And that leaves the codependent with emptiness. That's because they have become to believe that controlling, worrying, and trying to force things to happen shows how much we care. Controlling, worrying, forcing don't work, and we have already found that out. We're finally at a point that we realize these things aren't working. Now what do I do? Well, what we do now is the acceptance and then the detachment. In some cases, it may actually prevent the thing we actually desire. But as we practice the principle of detachment with the people in our life, we slowly begin to learn the truth. Detachment with love is a relationship behavior that works. When do we detach? How do we know it's time to detach? I've done all I can do. Or how do we know? What are the signs? All right, when we get hooked into a reaction of anger, fear, guilt, or shame, because you see, we've worked away from that now. In the past, we had lived our lives getting hooked into reactions of anger and fear and guilt, but not anymore. We're used to not always feeling that way. So as soon as we get hooked into that, we know it's time to detach.
Okay, so you said when we get hooked into reaction, what is that? Over.
Codependents tend to react to the people and circumstances around them. Well, what's wrong with that? Okay, what's wrong with that is we want to learn to respond. You know, at first you think, well, you've got to do something. Reacting, people that use codependence and that are controllers and abusers, they love it when they can get you to react to something they've said or something they've done. Quit reacting, just respond to it. Choose an appropriate response, and that leaves them out of control. So the first time you feel getting hooked into something that you react to, you know you need to take a step back and detach. Another time to detach is when you get hooked into a power play. When someone else is trying to control you, take a step back and detach. When we attempt to control or force others to do something they don't want to do, a flag goes up, we're doing it again. We're being codependent. This is not healthy. I need to detach. I'm trying to save that person's life, but I can't. Only God can do that. And they don't care. And back to what we had in the other lesson, it doesn't matter that I'm willing to give my life for this person. They don't want it. They don't want my life. So I've got to detach.
Excuse me. Then you'd be wasting yourself, wouldn't you?
We waste ourselves
You waste
with people
yourself.
like this. And in a sense,
Or your
we've
mind,
wasted
or
our whole life.
whatever.
But we can start living now that we know the rules. When the way that we are reacting isn't helping the other person or solving the problem, all of a sudden you realize this isn't helping. Time to detach. When the way that we are reacting is hurting, when we become in immense pain and nothing's changing and what we're doing is not helping, we detach.
Okay, Betsy, how do we detach?
Okay, that's our very next session here, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. There's one more signal to look for when we need to detach. Often, this is my favorite, we need to detach when it appears to be the least likely or possible thing to do. When we're hanging on with everything we've got, trying to control, trying to change, trying to be God, and we're thinking, I can't let go, I can't let go. That's a good sign we need to detach.
At that point.
And Sharon said, how? How do we detach? The first step towards detachment is understanding that reacting and controlling is not helping. And so get into reality, feel your feelings, stop and think, now, what do I do about this? This is not helping. That's your first step towards detaching. The next step is getting peaceful. You know, in full-blown codependency, there's no peace whatsoever. We're constantly in a turmoil. We're constantly obsessing. We're running in circles, running away from our feelings, running from ourselves. Now we're learning to get peaceful. We're leaving some room inside ourselves now to feel peace. How do we get peace? How do we get centered and restore our balance? Well, let's remember that all this is an addiction, just as real as a drug or alcohol addiction or any other addiction. When a person is in recovery from, let's say, drug or alcohol, that's one that most people can understand and identify because it's so obvious. When someone's been in recovery for a long time and all of a sudden they have the need for a fix, and they don't want to fall off the wagon. They've done it before. They want to stay in recovery. But they've got to do something to get past that urge. What do? They do whatever it takes to keep from getting back into the addiction. They take a walk, they run, take a bath, take a drink of water, eat a meal, call a friend, go to God. You do whatever it takes to get the peacefulness that you need inside. Get some balance. The second step in detaching. From the peace of the place inside of you and the centering that you get from doing all this, an answer will emerge. You will not find an answer to any of these problems as long as you're in a turmoil and obsessing. It's only when you get some peacefulness that you can sit down and find some answers. Detachment does not come naturally for codependents, but once they realize the value of this recovery principle, they understand how vitally important it is. The following illustrates how a woman came to understand detachment when, after years of outrageous attempts to make her husband stop drinking, she realized how his alcoholism was controlling her. And if you've ever had a loved one who is an alcoholic and you've seen how his loved ones, the outrageous attempts that they made to stop his drinking, they ended up looking and appearing crazier than he did because he didn't care. When he's ready, he was going to address the problem. If he wanted to stop, he would stop. We cannot make another person do what they don't want to do. So Robin Norwood, in her book, Women Who Love Too Much, gave this illustration about the woman that after years of being crazy, she just realized, I can't do anything about his drinking, and I'm letting it control me. And she says, I set him free to do as he chose. And the minute she did, she realized he's been doing what he chose all this time. Anyway. And she says, things changed the night I detached. He could feel it, and so could I. And when you do it, everything will change for you. The person will change. The way they relate to you will change. They will know something's different, something's wrong. Usually they won't realize what you've done right away, but they will know that something has changed.
And will that bring about a change in the other person?
That will come nearer to bringing out a change than anything else you can do at this point. And that's what you wanted all along. And she said the most wonderful thing, when I set him free, I set myself free. It all sounds so easy on paper. It's not that
Well, I
easy
guess
to
that,
do.
excuse me, but I guess that is true though, because if she was having a turmoil, or we do too, with whatever problem we are dealing with, and then when we let it go or set it free, we are free
That's
to a
right.
certain extent for a little while or whatever.
We still love them. We still want them to get well. We still want to help them, and we can continue to help them. We just don't want to take over their life.
But really, when you let them go, aren't you actually helping them?
Tough love. Letting them go in love and letting them go to God, handing them over to God. As you practice the principle of detachment, you will find times when you have to detach from unhealthy people and healthy people. Because all of a sudden you're working on your own issues, your own problems, your own recovery, and you may need to pull away from healthy people at times. It does not fail. Detachment is a gift. It is a gift from God, and it will be given to us when we are ready for it. And that's the beauty of this whole concept and this whole series of recovery. All of these will come to us, and we'll be able to do them when we're ready. And when we try any of these things, if we're not ready for it, if it doesn't work, that's okay. There's no rule book. There's no certain way to do it. Each person's recovery is their own. But be aware that detachment, this is so important, is not a cold, hostile withdrawal, a resigned, despairing acceptance of anything life and people throw our way. And as codependents, it would be easy to fall into that, to quit taking responsibility for ourselves and our feelings and our problems and saying, I'm just going to detach from everything and let everybody abuse us and overstep our boundaries. That's not what detachment is. It's also not a removal of our love and concern, although sometimes that may be the best thing that we can do for the moment. Sometimes we can be driven to the point that we throw our hands up and we say, I just don't care anymore. It's okay for the moment, because when you get centered and when you get some balance, you will start caring again, but in the right way. It doesn't mean we don't care. It means we learn to love and care and be involved without going crazy. Now, why do we need to detach? As if we haven't already figured out some good reasons. Well, besides what it will do for our loved ones, the rewards from detachment are our own serenity, a deep sense of peace, and then the ability to give and receive love. And that's what we really have always wanted anyway. When we detach, it may sometimes motivate Sharon and free the people around us to begin to solve their problems. And many times they'll find someone else to turn to that will pick up where you left off, but they may not. It may jerk them into reality, and they may get on their own road to recovery. Detachment is both an act and an art. There is an art to it. It becomes a way of life with us. It is a gift, and it will be given to those who seek it. Detaching means we care about ourselves. That's new for codependents. We're beginning to care about ourselves enough to do things to take care of ourselves and about others around us, and it frees us to make the best possible decisions about ourselves and about the ones we love. It helps us to set the boundaries we need to set with people. We must learn detachment before we can do the other things we need to do in recovery. We cannot begin to work on ourselves, to live our own lives, feel our own feelings, and solve our own problems until we have detached from the object of our obsession. So detaching is going to help us with obsessing. It's going to help us with acceptance. It's going to help us with denial, with not getting back into denial. It's going to help us with learning to feel our feelings. Detaching allows us to have our feelings, but to stop reacting and to initiate a positive course of action. A lot of this is repeating itself, but we have to do it over and over and over until we learn it, until it becomes natural. And it will in time. It will come to us naturally.
That's what I was going to ask you. It's something we just have to do repeatedly.
It is
In
a
some
lifelong
cases,
journey.
in
Yes.
the case that might concern the person who's involved, me or whoever, constantly. But
Detaching frees and encourages other people to do the same thing, the people that we love. It will encourage them, whether they even know it or not. It may encourage them or force them to do the same thing, to detach from you. Oh, the best thing, it allows God to step in and do the work. And you know, when we read that, it just hits us how much we have kept God out. And we ask God, help me do this, help us with this. We ask God for things, we tell him what we need and what we want, and we tell him we trust him, and then we go and we try to do what we've asked
So put
God
in
to
his
do
hand.
for us. A very human
Guilty
thing
at
to do.
at
And
times.
so when we detach lovingly, it allows God to step in and say, he
Okay.
probably says, I'm so glad you got out of my way. And from experience, it appears that even God can't do much with us until we have detached. Detachment is an underlying concept that we need to do frequently as we strive to live happy lives. And it's just something that we just want to learn to do in small things, big things, crises, everyday things. Learn to detach when these signals come up. Detachment is the key to recovery from codependency. It is the key to all the other things that we've talked about up to this point. Detachment can strengthen our healthy relationships because you know what? By this point in time, we're actually getting healthy in some areas, and we're actually attracting some healthy people. And we have
So
some
you
healthy
saying when you
relationships.
get to the point where you can detach, you are making progress?
We are making tremendous progress. We have adopted some healthy ways of coping. We have changed some unhealthy ways of thinking. We have gotten in touch with an enormous amount of feelings from the past. We've come out of a lot of denial, and we're getting in reality with our life and our situation. By the time we've come to this point, we have made a lot of progress. Detachment benefits our difficult relationships. We had just said it can strengthen our healthy ones, and it can benefit our difficult ones, the ones that are teaching us to cope. Melody Beattie has written some of the most beautiful writings on codependency. She finds good in anything and everything, and she sees the hand of God in everything that happens to us, everything in our past, everything that's happening to us now. And she calls difficult relationships, God must have needed you to learn something. And so he allowed that to happen to teach you a good lesson in life, to teach you something you needed to know. You could spend your life worrying about bad things that have happened to you in your life. Why did it have to happen?
But-
Melody Beattie puts it all in God's hands. Detachment is not something we do once. We don't say, okay, now I know what it's all about, I understand it, and I'm going to do it now, from now on. It is not something we do once. It is a daily behavior in recovery. We learn it when we are beginning our recovery from codependency and adult children issues. We continue to practice it along the way as we grow and change. And by now, you will feel some change, probably a lot of change by now. If you've been reading the lessons, studying them, discussing them with your friends, and doing the suggested work at the end and writing and keeping a journal. We will continue to practice it along the way, and we will practice it as our relationships grow and change. We learn to let go of people we love, people we like. That's a good thought too. If we're not careful as codependents, we'll get just as controlling over healthy people as we did unhealthy people. We will try to.
Where you expect too much out of them.
We will feel obligated to take over their problems for them, to solve them, to take away their pain, to take away their worry. It's a natural reaction for us. One of the first things we do when we begin recovery from codependency, and we start pulling away from unhealthy relationships and people that tend to draw towards us because we will take care of them. We get around healthy people, we will still tend to want to take care of them, to want to do for them what they can do for themselves. We have to learn to detach from that. We also learn to detach from people that we really don't care for. Sometimes we tend to confuse pity and love, or pity and not caring for a person. And if it's someone that we just clash with, that we don't have anything in common with, we may tend to pity them and then feel that we owe it to them to be good to them and take care of them and back into
So
the
you're
old.
saying
Really?
that, like, if you feel sorry for someone, that you tend to want to take care of
Sure,
them, do
sure.
things for them?
Feel like you just have to. I think I understand that.
Codependents will always tend to want to take care of people and take care of their problems for them. Now, there are 4 steps we want to remember in this art of detachment. First of all, we separate ourselves and our process from these people and their process. We separate our recovery from their recovery. There's no doubt that these unhealthy, dysfunctional people that we've been trying to help need to be in recovery, but we separate our recovery from theirs. And our first inclination will be to bring them with us. You know, oh, this is wonderful. This would be so good for
But
them.
would that hurt you if you brought them?
Of course it will. It will hold us back, and they're not going to buy this. When they get ready for it, yes, we will be there for them. We will give them the information. We will share our journey with them, but not until they're ready.
They ready.
But that's okay, Annetta. Because in the first lesson on this, in every class I've taught, it has been a constant outburst of people saying, oh, I've got a friend that needs this so bad, or someone in my family needs, oh, I'm going to take this home. But by the end of the lesson on controlling, now they realize that they're the ones that need the help. They're the ones that needs to get on the road to recovery. And the other person needs it too, but they're going to have to be at the right place and let God direct them. But we all know people that needs this as bad as we need it. First step, separate yourself from all of that. The second step, we relinquish our tight hold and our need to control in our relationships. Of course, we know that already. We've been saying that over and over and over. But in the act of detachment, in the art of detachment, we've just got to remember it even more. We take responsibility for ourselves, and we allow others to do the same. And so if we're trying to practice detachment, but we're taking responsibility for our loved ones still, and we are still holding on tightly, well, detachment's not going to work. It's just going to make things more confusing and bring us more anguish inside and more confusion. So we've got to take responsibility for ourselves and let go. We detach with the understanding that life is unfolding exactly as it needs to. Not only for us, but for the other person too. Because when they are ready, God will be there for them and lead them towards the road to recovery. Because the way life unfolds is good. This is if we have turned our will over to God and allowed Him to direct our life. Then we can always be assured whatever is happening is for the best, that God can turn it out to work for good for us, even when it hurts.
I believe that.
And ultimately, we can benefit from even the most difficult situations We do this with the understanding that a power greater than us is in charge, and all is well. And if we had only thought about that in earlier years when we were in so much codependency, we knew it. We knew it all along, but we were so filled with taking care of other people, with trying to control other people, trying to control all of these situations, we didn't have time to stop and realize, that's right, God is in control. Now, in detachment, when you try it and you fail a few times, and even though you'll have some excellent success and then you won't, remember, that's okay. There's no rule book. We don't have to make ourselves crazy trying to learn to detach. We don't have to be so afraid. We don't have to attach perfectly. As codependents, the first thing we think is, I've got to do it, and I've got to do it right. I've got to do it now. I have to do it perfectly, but we don't. Sometimes people we love do things that we don't like or approve of. We react, they react, and before long, we're all reacting to each other, and the problem escalates. This can happen just like that. It can happen so fast. When we're just at the peak of our recovery and we think everything's going to be great from now on, forever and ever, and something like this can happen and everybody starts reacting off of everybody. How do we extricate our emotions, our minds, body, and spirit from the agony of entanglement? All the way, we're all the way back to square one. How do we get out of it the best way we can? By detaching. Just simply go back to what we've already learned. However, and at whatever pace you practice detachment in your life, it will be right for you. In our next lesson, we're going to talk about boundaries. And I want to thank you, ladies, for joining me and for your input. And thank you for joining me again.